Welcome to the Church Renewal Podcast.
I'm Matt.
I'm Jeremy.
Last week, Matt and Jeremy began tracing how discernment and differentiation fit together as spiritual practices, ways that leaders stay clear, humble, and faithful while listening for the Spirit's direction. For the sake of continuity, we're going to roll back to the end of last week's episode where they left off as the conversation turns from foundation to formation, from what Spirit-led leadership is to what it actually looks like in real life. In this episode, they take us inside the work of staying present when anxiety rises, of leading with courage instead of control, and of building the kind of community where discernment can truly take root. Let's rejoin the conversation for part 2 of Discernment and Differentiation led by the Spirit.
I want to pivot here. There were some of the questions on the sheet here that you get to the isolation. I think we could pivot to at this point. Brad Paisley has a song called Me and Jesus. And you read this in my notes and you're like, I don't know the song. Well, the basic premise of the song is a guy singing, me and Jesus were fine.
Okay.
And I listened to the song, and this could be the anthem for a lot of Christians I know. I've got a hotline to God. I talk to him. He tells me whatever it is that I'm going to tell you he told me, and that's it. We're good. He said it's cool. It's cool.
It misses that wisdom in a multitude of counselors, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I think it misses that because I still need sanctification and I'm still radically imperfect. Man, I can be very, very mistaken. I can just be subject to my own immaturity, which is ongoing.
Absolutely.
Which is a great danger for people who accept themselves from church. They're kind of like, I already know what I need to know. I need to grow. And I'm a 50-something pastor. I've been in ministry for over 30 years, and it's staggering how much I still don't know and don't understand and am mistaken about. We all need that ongoing growth.
Well, this goes all the way back to episode 2 as well. Because when I separate myself out and take on this demonic theology, that me and Jesus can just have our own thing
coexist,
going on.
Direct pipeline, right?
What I'm saying fundamentally is the whole family motif that also carries with it the authority structure that is born out of God's person. I'm saying, Lord, I don't need that.
Yeah.
Your authority structure is crap.
Right. I can make it on my own.
Someone somewhere got it wrong ahead of me, and I don't really think this is of you because you speak directly to me. You're the only one who's going to judge me because you've already said Christians can't be judgers.
Right. And it's to cut ourselves off from part of the goodness that God wants to give to us. In the New Testament, there are 24 one another commands, and if you cut yourself off from the body of Christ, you can neither obey them for the sake of others nor receive from others as they obey them. And that is a great detriment to you and to other people, to not have you be there to minister to them, much less you be there so other people can minister to you.
So it's more than my rejection of God's ordained authority.
Yeah.
It's also me separating myself out and saying, hey, I'm going to take my marbles and I'm going to go play by myself. I'm going to play over here. You're not going to get the benefit. And, nice knowing you. God be with you. Catch you on the bottom and see you in heaven, maybe.
Right. So how do these relate? Discernment and differentiation. I like the scene in Acts 15. And the reason that I like it for a lot of reasons is it's a good example of community spiritual discernment and how this happens. Because as the different participants are there, they act in ways that we would describe as differentiated. So notice that the speeches are what I think. They're not what you are messing up. They're not how you're heretical.
Right.
They're me. This is my experience as I've ministered. And there are people that are keeping within their goals and values. They're not stepping over the line, and they're not defining other people. They're not stepping over the line and telling other people, well, you're wrong. You got that. That's not what's happening.
Mm-hmm.
So in one sense, a good conversation that's headed towards discernment, that's what Acts 15 is.
Mm-hmm.
That kind of conversation is best pursued by people who are differentiated. If they're not differentiated, here's what happens. And I know I'll just grab other people's experiences because you, listener, may have never experienced this before. So I'll just tell you about other people's experience.
Matt's fables.
So Matt's fables, not Friedman's fables, but Matt's fables, which is marvelous. If you've not read Friedman's fables, it's quite marvelous.
He's a great writer.
So how many times have you been in a conversation with other Christians, trying to understand the Lord's will, and somebody comes along and says, well, that's because and they are making assumptions about you, they're judging you, they're critiquing you. And in this family systems theory, the way what that's called is they're defining you, not defining self.
Well, I do that, Matt. You're correct about that. I certainly don't adapt to it.
So the other thing that happens in differentiation, again, one of these conversations people gather for community spiritual discernment, is there are two reactions. I think we maybe touched on these yesterday or when we were recording, but so previous episodes for you listener. But there's two reactions for people that aren't differentiated in a difficult conversation,
right?
Which certainly Acts 15 is one of those. And the labels for these are reactivity and adaptivity. And again, they're just labels to describe behaviors. So what does reactive behavior looks like? Well, Jared comes at me and he says, well, my sense from the scriptures is that, and again, he's actually doing this part right. In this scenario, my sense from the scriptures is, okay, so he's not trying to define me, defining himself, he's telling me about his goals and values, he's saying what his position is, right? My sense from the scriptures is that Gentiles shouldn't be subject to the law. That was for the Jews.
Yeah.
And one possibility that I could have in reaction to that is that I could blow my top and I could react to that and say, look, I'm from a Jewish background. I've always done this. If I've had to do it, then everybody should have to do it. And you're wrong, right? And I could just blow my top and react to Jer in conversation. And the effect that typically has is it makes the other person back down and back off. And it ends up as a power play, as a manipulation.
Yep.
So reactive, that's not helpful. Right. And that's a lack of differentiation because what have I done? I've stepped over the line into Jer's space. What I should say is, okay, I hear you. I hear what you said. Here's my perspective for consideration. Okay. So that's not reactive. It's that I do hear him. I do respect his viewpoint. I do listen to it, make sure that I understand it. So it's good communication. I can repeat back to him what he can say. Good debate. Etiquette is that I can repeat back to you your position in a form that you can believe before I disagree with. Okay?
Yes.
All right. So, but the reactive just blows his top and uses it as typically as a form of manipulation, as a form of stepping over the line and defining the other person. All right. So that's one way that conversations like this get blown up and keep you from actually getting to something that is the wisdom that comes from above. The other problem that can happen with differentiation is what's called adaptivity. And adaptivity is, Jer says, I don't think we should expect anything of the Gentiles at all. The gospel that we heard is one of free grace. Okay, full stop. And I go, even though in my heart of hearts, I want to say, no, I don't think that's right, because Jesus was Jewish and the 10 Commandments are abiding, and the kinds of things that you might say in a logical argument about this, and were said in the Jerusalem Council. I kind of go, oh, okay. I guess you're right. And I don't stick to my own goals and values. I don't actually say my viewpoint. When I'm teaching this to groups that are gathered for discernment, I talk about we're trying to put together a 1,000-piece puzzle and everybody has pieces in their pocket.
Yeah.
We can't make the picture unless everybody takes their pieces out of their pocket.
Yes.
Reactivity means I leave my pieces in my pocket because I don't want to step into that again.
Right.
I'm like, okay, forget it. Mine must not be part of the picture. Adaptivity says, oh, no, I'm scared of this. I don't think I've got any wisdom from the Spirit. I'm going to leave my pieces in my pocket. And so they're both adaptivity and reactivity keep us from gathering all of the wisdom that we could from the people at the table. And this is where errors in differentiation can actually make this work of community spiritual discernment much harder. Super dense. Sorry.
No, I that's excellent, and I'm sure we'll go over time. But thankfully, my timer hasn't gone off, so I'm going to keep on pushing on this.
Okay.
You said the word fear when talking about the adaptivity.
Yeah.
Okay?
Yeah.
And I want to ask about that, but I also want to go back and ask about the first, because I'm drawing a connection in my mind here. Again, identity and acceptance. I can understand as a person who genuinely is more prone to adaptivity than reactivity.
And Matt more prone to reactivity than adaptivity.
Which is why he just jumped on that.
That's right.
I can answer this question. Why would I adapt?
Hmm.
And I can tell you because I've done a lot of thinking about myself, a lot of listening to others reflect back to me what they see in me,
Mm-hmm.
and how they experience my, all that personality, ellipsis. And I can say the biggest reason that I would walk away, quiet down, back down, is because I'm afraid of the loss of relationship.
Mm-hmm.
Acceptance. Now, I want to ask this. What other reasons, besides fear,
Mm-hmm.
might someone adapt in a scenario like this?
Yeah. So again, adaptivity is that you don't stick to your goals and values. You don't take your viewpoint out of the pocket. You don't take your pieces out of your pocket and lay them on the table.
Mm-hmm.
So why else would people not do that? Some people better sense their humility than others, which is ironic, because some people whose self-concept is not based in the gospel,
Mm-hmm.
who don't have a good sense of their gifts or their wisdom, they actually can tend to be more thoughtful, but they're more hesitant because of their humility to take their pieces out of their pocket.
Mm.
And so it's not just fear that's loss of relationship, it's also that I'm insecure about the insight that I think that I have.
Kind of sounds like fear again.
Yeah, and I wonder, is this an environment where I can float this? I can't tell you how many times, as our elder board, as our session in our church, we had an elder that was so good at this, so good at helping us. We'd be going along back and forth, and he was a much quieter one, and he wasn't one of the reactive ones like me and the other guys. And he'd just sit back there, and man, could he cut a Gordian knot. And man, could he wasn't adaptive in the sense that he wouldn't put his pieces out on the table, but he did wait for all us reactive to kind of put it all out there. And then the Lord invariably worked through this brother, and like in Acts 15, where out of James's mouth, and you're going to have to read the book about why that's so ironic that it's out of James's mouth, right? And out of this guy's mouth would be like, oh, yeah. So none of us came in with that idea, but it's very clear and obvious that that is exactly what we should do.
Mm-hmm.
And there the Spirit had worked among us through this debate and disagreement, through everyone being willing to put their pieces on the table. And a picture had emerged that was kind of like, well, I didn't think that was the way it was going to be. It was the back of the pieces. Who could have known? Right? Yeah. And that's
There's supposed to be a nice brown cardboard looking piece right here.
Yeah. And it's so I think that, so you said, what are the reasons for adaptivity? So fear and insecurity is a little bit different than fear. It's a little bit different than loss of relationship, right? It's it could be lack of confidence. It could be real humility. I think insecurity goes to an identity issue more than an acceptance issue. I'm not really sure about this because I'm not confident. Right.
I want to be confident because this is important.
Right.
And because I'm not, I'm going to hold back. And I'll say this too, and this is probably just me, okay? But when I do that, whether it's from insecurity or fear of rejection or fear of acceptance, whatever that is, I have found more often than not that what is actually underneath is a lack of love for the people with whom I'm walking.
Talk about that.
We're in a what some people have rightly called crucial conversations. We have a real issue we need to work through to find a solution. We need to identify what this actually is, define it together, have a shared meaning, figure out what we need to do, come up with a plan, and move forward. Otherwise, bad things happen.
Right.
I may see a particular thing. I may be watching and say, hey, I have something here. I see something. I believe this would help us move forward.
Mm-hmm.
I also don't think it's going to be received well. And maybe someone else will come up with that. There's lots of really smart people here.
Right.
And I'm just going to wait and listen.
Mm-hmm.
And when there's a point at which my waiting and listening really is, just speaking for me, I do that to try to gain more understanding before stepping forward. But at some point, and I've found this with myself, at some point, I will know I need to say this. And if I don't say it, the truth at the end of the day is because I really don't care what happens to you.
It's a lack of love.
I don't care how this turns out. I'm not invested in it. So do whatever you want.
Yeah. Yep.
Because at the end of the day, I'm going to walk away and bad things might happen, but God's good. He'll redeem and blah, blah, blah. I don't care about you.
You don't end up loving enough to risk.
I don't end up loving enough to be genuine, to show up in integrity.
Interesting.
Because that's what it really comes down to.
You had mentioned Amy Edmondson a couple episodes ago, and I think that this is a space where that idea of that
psychological safety.
Okay. So I think that people who are tempted towards adaptivity, who hesitate to speak their mind, right? They really, really need a place that it's very clear that this is a place of psychological safety.
Yep.
And the people like me that are reactive, man, what Jer's just described about holding back because of a lack of love, I hold back consciously in many, many conversations. Jeremy's about ready to lose his mind because he can't imagine that. But in group settings, I hang back and I pray because I don't want to dominate the conversation. And if the Spirit wants it to get said, I pray that somebody else will say it.
Yeah.
And if no one does, then towards the end, meekly, after many others have been heard, I may offer it as I would offer it if it's not been said, and I do think it's wise and it lines up with Scripture.
Yeah.
I will say it humbly, but after many others have spoken.
Yeah, I've been there as well. And oftentimes I will approach that in this sort of way. Hey, I've been listening. I just want to offer this as an observation.
Yep.
And I'll couch it just that way.
Exactly.
What I don't want to do is the fact that I'm saying, because we all know the guy who is quiet can be perceived as wise because the fool who doesn't speak is considered wise.
Right. Rather than opening his mouth and taking away all doubt.
That's right.
Yeah.
But I also know that there is a gravitas that can be mistaken for truth.
Yep.
And I don't want to do that either.
And the last word shouldn't always win.
No.
Because the last word might be tremendously unwise. And it may be that if I've held back and I've listened to everything, I'm like, well, I thought that was insightful, but it's actually not now that I've listened to the conversation.
And that goes back to choosing the 12th disciple or the 13th disciple. Yes, we did this. Yes, we made a decision. Does that mean that we don't ever visit this again? That we don't go through this process again saying, Lord, what are you doing?
Yeah. Yeah, because Paul was
brought the son up again.
Paul was a hard choice, right? There was a legitimate fear as a
he was
accomplice
not on
to
the
murder.
first nomination ballot.
He was not on the first nomination ballot. So when we think about adaptivity and reactivity, right? I'll put this label on me. Us that are perceived as dominant, as leader types in groups, we can distort the conversation because people expect, because of our dominance, that we're going to be reactive. And so it's our job to create that psychological safety where when someone brings especially someone who's meek, brings out their pieces and sort of gently lays them on the table and begins to flip them over, that we go, thank you. We would have never understood part of this without you being willing to do that. And that produces a good cycle. Because it may be that me as a dominant leader, I may have a good idea, but there's just as good a chance, or maybe better, that I don't. And that's why we do it in community and why it's discernment, right?
That's right.
Because if it could just be done by me, then we just do it that way.
Right.
But I know my lack of wisdom.
Dr. Quick gave us that story back in season 3.5, which is airing actually right now as you and I record this, about the church that was going through this. And direction that the Lord brought for the church came through the most unlikely source.
Yeah.
We've talked about the adaptive person, fear, insecurity, lack of love. We can talk about the reactive person, and we can talk about there's potentially fear as a motivation there. There's potentially pride as a motivation.
Absolutely, pride as a motivation. And lack of emotional management. Like
emotional management?
Like not being able to deal with being disagreed with, which is a complex kind of thing, dealing with idolatry and pride and some emotional regulation, because it's an anxious thing to be in a conversation where you don't know where it's going to go, and people react to that anxiety differently.
There's a concept of courage
Mm-hmm.
by an author that you and I have both read, Brene Brown.
Right. Yep.
And this idea of courage is one that I think dovetails very nicely in here. Because when I think about the reactive person in this kind of setting,
Mm-hmm.
the verse I want to have this person write down, just kind of carry in their front pocket, is in the multitude of words, there's often folly.
Mm-hmm.
But for the person like me who's adaptive, I want to write down the scripture from Ezekiel, O watchman on the wall. If you see the evil coming and don't say anything, their blood is on you. Because that's what I have to wrestle with. That's where I have to say, well, this is how I know it's not loving.
Right.
Because at some point something bad happens and I was there. I was responsible to speak up. And even if they weren't going to listen, even if they were going to reject me, God's going to hold me responsible for the task he gave me, which was to carry out what he gave me to say.
Right. Right.
In both cases, what's required is courage. In my case, it's courage that I will be okay, that I'll be safe. In your case, as the reactive person, it's courage to say that even if I don't say this, God will still work out what's good.
Right. Right. Yep. Courage and trust, right? Trust is the coin in the realm. And it's trust for both. Interestingly, it's trust for both.
It's almost as if we need to allow God to be differentiated and not overfunction for him or underfunction.
That's fascinating. That's actually fascinating. Yeah, because the dominant person overfunctions and the adaptive person underfunctions. That's very interesting when we're gathered for community spiritual discernment, right?
Indeed.
Yeah.
So do you want to talk about isolation?
Yeah. So sometimes differentiation, remember differentiation, my talking about it is there's a line that exists between two people, right? And that the differentiated person gets right up to the line, but they stay on their side of the line, right? Yeah. They don't yell from way back, right? They get right up to the line and they relate right there at the line. They don't step over the line, okay? So the isolated person is the person who's way back from the line. And you may be hearing their words, but you're not getting their relationship. They're not in genuine community with other people where other people can actually see them and speak into their life and that they could receive the one another's from somebody else. And so to be differentiated is not to be isolated. That is an absolute mistake. That these are the people, they don't hear it from anybody because I'm differentiated. I had a friend that I worked with many years ago who was just came from a very difficult family. So he was trying to wrestle with this coming from a very difficult family background. And this was in the 90s. And so we're in the era of boundaries. Boundaries, of course, was an attempt to popularize this concept of differentiation, right? It's the boundary. It's the line between two people. Okay. And this guy, he misunderstood this as he was trying to grapple with how so many times his family had come across the line. He was trying to get back from the line just for his own safety. And then, Lord willing, I think over time, I hope he got back up to the line to be able to relate to people really closely. But he misunderstood this and he sort of isolated himself from anybody else's viewpoint about him because he'd really been abused.
Yeah.
And you could understand why he didn't feel safe to come up to the line. But there are pastors who are in that position. They don't feel safe to come up to the line. And so they're not relationally close to other people. They're not in accountable relationships. There's not people in their life they can say anything to about what they're struggling with. And that is a real problem. The differentiated person is not isolated. They're right at the line in close relationship with people.
Would you please say that again? Because I really do want our listeners to hear that because I think you blew past how big the reality of that truth is.
So the differentiated person is not the isolated person. Differentiation, in my mind, is actually what enables you to have relationship because you're not in fear that you're going to be swallowed up and you've self-sworn that I'm not going to swallow someone else up. And so I'm going to honor the dignity of somebody else. And when you have two people that honor each other's dignity, they can be close. The person who misunderstands this and thinks that to be differentiated means that I'm far away, that I isolate, they get away from relationship. They're not in close relationship. Maybe if they're married, they're not even in close relationship. Much less, they don't have accountable people around them who can speak into their life. We moved settings from yesterday where we were recording, because there was another church worshiping at the place that we're recording today. And just to my right on the bookshelf is a book by a man that I went to seminary with, and actually preached at my ordination. And at my installation at the church I served in West Seattle, and later became a heretic and then an unbeliever and divorced his wife.
Oh my.
Absolutely heart-wrenching. The reason was that he isolated himself and he did not let other people speak into his life, which is so vital because we see so little. Those of us who understand the doctrine of depravity should understand just how little we actually see and how much we need people to speak into our life. Good things, gracious things, kind things, compassionate things. Remember, the commands of the Lord are goodness to us. And we need people. We need to be right at the line and say, what do you see, Jared, in my life that needs to be? Because I need you. And that only happens if we can get up to the line. The isolated person doesn't do that. That's not differentiated, right? The differentiated person is the one who actually can have relationship.
Courage. Again.
Yeah.
Courage. It requires courage to trust God that He holds my identity. He's the one who gives me my name. He's the one who is going to give me a rock that has my name on it that no one else knows.
Mm-hmm.
And He's the one who's going to accept me.
Yep.
He's the one who is going to make me acceptable and then call me acceptable and then actually enact that acceptability. And
through His own Son.
I don't want to understate this at all. Most of the pastors that I have had the privilege of knowing have been on the vast majority of this side of the spectrum of not having the courage to walk openly the way that God has called them to.
Mm-hmm.
It is very hard for a pastor in a position of authority to walk humbly before his God with other men who can hold him accountable, to whom he opens himself up for rebuke, for correction, for investigation, to say, no, I may have this title, but again, going back to episode 2, God does not call pastors to be pastors or elders to be elders because they have received some special next level, I've leveled up anything. We are all broken vessels that God uses for His purpose. And if we won't do what He's called us to do, He'll find another broken vessel. And sometimes that broken vessel will look like a donkey.
Right?
God doesn't care.
Yeah.
He's going to use what He's going to use.
Thanks for listening to the Church Renewal podcast from Flourish Coaching. Flourish exists to set ministry leaders free to be effective wherever God has called them. We believe that there's only one fully sufficient reason that this day dawned. Jesus is still gathering His people, and He's using His church to do it. When pastors or churches feel stuck, our team of coaches refresh their hope in the gospel and help them clarify their strategy. If you have questions or a need, we'd love to hear from you. For more information, go to our website, flourishcoaching.org, or send an email to info@flourishcoaching.org. You can also connect with us on Facebook, X, and YouTube. We appreciate when you like, subscribe, rate, or review our show whenever you're listening. It can be hard for churches to ask for help, so when our clients tell us who referred them, we'll send a small gift to say thanks. A huge thank you to all our guests for making the time to share their stories with us. We are really blessed to have all these friends and partners. All music for this show has been licensed and was composed and created by artists. The Church Renewal podcast was directed and produced by Jeremy Seferati in association with Flourish Coaching, with the goal of equipping and encouraging your church to flourish wherever God has called you. Bye for now.